Well, for more, let's cross to Cambridge, Massachusetts. Attorney Thomas Becker of the University Network for Human Rights, the author of Coup, A Story of Violence and Resistance in Bolivia. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thank you so much.
Is it justified putting Jeanine Áñez in prison?
Well, certainly, I mean, any process needs proper investigation. There's certain due process requirements. But look, this is a person who took power undemocratically and during her first week carried out a slew of human rights violations, 2 separate massacres, and gave immunity to soldiers who carried out the massacres. So certainly there needs to be accountability for those who carried out these massacres, and she was in charge of this. So
how did she take over power undemocratically? Remember, there were all this string of resignations at the time. Who else could have taken power then?
Well, first, per Bolivian law, it goes from the president to the vice president and then to the president of Congress and Senate. All those people resigned because they were under threat. They received death threats. Several MAS officials were kidnapped. The president of Congress, his sibling was kidnapped. They sexually assaulted and tortured people. So certainly people resigned, but they resigned under duress. And it reached a point where then a bunch of undemocratically elected, non-elected officials decided that they were going to put Áñez in power, which is a violation of the Constitution.
Of course, since then, we've had elections, and the MAS is back in power. It does look like victor's justice, at least to the Organization of American States, which has put out a statement, strongly worded statement, questioning whether or not, and I'll read you one excerpt from that statement. It says that it's wondering aloud whether or not this is going to undermine rule of law in Bolivia. Your reaction to the OAS's words?
I mean, I think on the one hand, Luis Almagro, who was very involved in the 2019 electoral campaign, I think there's a real conflict of interest. So I think there's been a lot of critiques of the Organization of American States making statements right now. But I do recognize that this is certainly a delicate situation. Whenever you sue any sort of president, it's delicate, and it's going to cause all sorts of conflict. But it is worth emphasizing that, despite whatever conflict it causes, Bolivia has had more coups than any country in the world over the last century. They've had a slew of human rights violations, massive impunity, and these things need to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed through legal processes, not through conflict, not through fighting. And so I think these are the steps you take when people have oversaw massacres and committed other abuses.
All right, let's listen to the reaction of the Justice Minister. He defended the arrest of Jeanine Áñez.
As she had the sash placed on her, she has to have a trial of responsibilities, and that is what we have done this morning. Initiate actions of judgment of responsibilities. An ex-senator cannot be given the constitutional privilege to have a liability trial. For that reason, it was necessary to hold a regular trial for the events prior to her assuming the post of president.
Okay, a regular trial. I don't know the intricacies of Bolivian law, but Thomas Becker, in that case, why does she need to be in jail?
Well, I think I'm just going to focus on the massacres, though, that there was an entire year of widespread abuses, really unprecedented abuses in Bolivia. But the people who were in charge of the massacres in her first week were the defense minister, the minister of government, and then certainly Áñez, who authorized these operations. Those two fled already. Several ministers, several high-level officials have fled Bolivia. And so this happens all over the world. When there is a chance that someone will flee, they need to be arrested, so that there can actually be justice. I worked on a trial of responsibilities actually in Bolivia in the Supreme Court for 2 years, in which I think 17 of the 19 defendants had fled the country and avoided justice, and to this point have never been held accountable. Only 2 ministers were held accountable because the rest fled.
At this point in time, though, what are the prospects for Bolivia? Again, if you have this situation which is polarized, you've had an election, the MAS has returned to power, and now this.
As I mentioned, look, this is a very delicate situation, but victims deserve justice. When your family member has been tortured, when your family member has been shot dead, All these family members deserve justice, and there must be legal processes, or these things are going to continue. And as I'd mentioned, Bolivia has a very unfortunate history of these types of abuses and a very unfortunate history of coup d'etats. So they need to be addressed. And like I said, it needs to be done through the legal system, not through street justice. And I think that the government is advancing in a way that's most helpful and least problematic in a really delicate situation.
How do you expect the Biden administration to react? Will they stay out of it? Will they get involved?
Look, well, I mean, on the one hand, several of the ministers have allegedly fled to the United States. So certainly they should be extradited back to Bolivia. As I mentioned, the Minister of Government and the Minister of Defense allegedly are in the United States. They should be sent back so that they can do a proper investigation and a proper trial. Certainly international bodies can be involved or monitor, but this is a Bolivian legal process. As the Minister of Justice said today, he invites the international community to participate, to observe, to make sure that this is a fair process and that everyone receives due process. So I hope the Biden administration does participate in that way and make sure that this moves forward so that there can be justice for the families.
And what are you expecting, though?
I'm expecting, in terms of the legal process, just to give a little context, I did an 8-month study with Harvard Law School's International Human Rights Clinic and the University Network for Human Rights on the abuses during the Áñez government. And we saw many, many, many abuses. And I think there is a very, very strong chance that she and several other officials will be held accountable for these massacres, for torture, for arbitrary detentions, and various other egregious crimes.
I want to thank you, Thomas Baker. Your book, Coup, A Story of Violence and Resistance in Bolivia. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thank you so much.